I'm now joined by Antonio Pedro from the Economic Commission for Africa. So Antonio, tell me a little bit about your organization and what it does in general.
So the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa supports our member states, African member states, in structurally transforming its economies, the pursuit of economic and social development. So we work on many areas: macroeconomic stability, the pursuit of economic and diversification and industrialization, and of course, more recently, we're equally working on climate action and energy transitions.
And I'm really interested in this because you've just talking about, climate transitions, energy transitions. Yes. You've just signed an agreement recently with the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Zambia to manufacture electric car batteries, right? Can you tell us about that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is in line with the conversation here about Africa harnessing its potential, natural resources. Mm-hmm. And we've worked since November last year. First, we co-organized the DRC Africa Business Forum, where our argument was that Africa, and DRC in particular, was a globally competitive investment destination for the production of battery precursors. Since then, we've conducted a series of additional studies that have indeed confirmed that Africa can be a global competitive investment destination, not only this time around for the production of battery precursors, the chemicals that go into the batteries, but all up to the value chain in the production of electric vehicles. So we'll be launching soon a pre-feasibility study that will cover both DRC and Zambia, so that transboundary special economic zone, for the localization of the battery and electric vehicle value chain. And this is huge. It's a market that is going to grow up to $7.7 trillion by 2025 and $46 trillion by 2050. On the strength of the explosion of the electric vehicles. There will be about 160 million electric vehicles by then. And that represents plus or minus $46 trillion by 2050. So in Africa, until now, let's pick DRC again, because that was your question. DRC's GDP is $50 billion. Tesla market valuation was $1.3 trillion in January 2021. So this is the paradox of plenty. 70% of the cobalt that go into the production of batteries is located in DRC.
But this is where we need to change things, yes. Because instead of other countries coming into countries like the DRC mm-hmm. and just taking their cobalt, yeah. like Africans need to not just be exporting raw materials, but actually manufacturing their own goods like these batteries and these cars. Mm-hmm. So this project is a great example of what more African countries should be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So by moving just one step in the value chain, from exporting raw materials to producing and exporting battery precursors, DRC would go from a market which is about $11 billion, that's mining, to a market of battery precursors which is $271 billion, 25 times more. And I mean, I shared with you the figures about the production of electric mm-hmm. vehicles, $46 trillion. So this is about promoting resource-driven industrialization. This is about value addition. This is about creating jobs on the ground. You export raw materials, you're exporting jobs. So, and this is in line with the African mining vision, which was adopted by the heads of state and government in 2009 as the framework for the development of the extractive sector on the continent, underpinned indeed by more value addition, more linkages between the extractive industry and the local economy, creating opportunities for small and medium enterprises to be part of the value chain. This is what we are creating now in DRC and Zambia. And very interestingly, this is not just about producing battery and electric vehicles. It is also an opportunity to accelerate the deployment of renewable energy on the continent. Because on the same special economic zone, we'll be producing solar panels. And yes, batteries are key for you to store solar energy. And with the production of batteries on the continent, we'll be able, for example, to open up opportunities in countries such as Chad in the Sahel, which has some of the highest solar irradiation potential on the continent, But today, they cannot harness that potential because we don't have the batteries to store on the continent. And so this is it's transformational. This is absolutely
it absolutely is transformational. But for a lot of investors, especially in the US where we are, when they think about these countries, they think about the Sahel or they think about DRC, there are security issues, and that always seems to cast a shadow over the investment opportunities. So what do you want them to know about the reality on the ground and the reality of the investment potential in these countries?
First is really all of our conversation are data driven. So it's important that it's evidence-based analysis. So when we organized the DRC Africa Business Forum in November 2021, we had commissioned a study, so Bloomberg Nerf conducted a study on our behalf that has proven that the production of battery precursors in DRC was 3 times cheaper than the United States and China, and 2 times cheaper than Poland. Those were the comparators. So we are armed with that information. Then the second part of the conversation, what are the risks that you are afraid of? Can we create, through our special economic zones, a place where you can secure predictability in the legal and regulatory frameworks, because that's important, that you can have first-class infrastructure. So making the risking investments, in other words. And the good news is that in all of this work that we have done since November 2021 in DRC, we are working with the multilateral development banks on the continent, with the African Development Bank, with the Afrexim Bank, with the African Finance Corporation, and Badea.
And most importantly, all of these projects create jobs. And there is a lot of youth unemployment at the moment across Africa.
And it will strengthen intra-African trade. You've heard before the figures, we are about 18-19%, and in certain regions, Central Africa, this is where DRC is located, we are talking of 3% only. That's the share of intra-African trade. Compare that to 60% and 70% in Europe and other regions. That's the opportunity. And this is what, by creating this Africa-wide regional value chain, we will be increasing the share of product complementarity between our economies. In this case, for example, we are looking at the countries on the continent where we have capacity on the automotive sector to produce the electric vehicles. And here is about South Africa, is about Morocco, is about Egypt and Kenya, and so on and so forth. So we are creating a value chain that will integrate Africa, that will make the African continent, will give sense and purpose to the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement.
Absolutely. I mean, the market and the potential for renewable energy in Africa is huge. Yeah. But, so often when we're at these conferences, people are here and they say, okay, what do you want, Western investors to know? What do you, how can we attract them? I want to ask you a different question.
Yes.
For the young African who is sitting at home, whether that be in Accra, whether that be in Lusaka, wherever they are, in Cairo, they're watching this. What message do you have to them for why they should be excited about their country? They should be excited about the potential on their continent and want to stay and commit to developing Africa as opposed to going abroad?
First, in line with the Nairobi Declaration, we've just coming from Nairobi, the Africa Climate Summit, where we recognize the importance, for example, of securing climate justice. But at the same time, we did indicate that Africa is a powerhouse for solutions for climate action and investment. And in that paradigm, there's huge opportunities for young people to play an important role. For example, we are developing carbon credit markets on the continent, basically to recognize the ecological service associated with our natural capital, and then monetize them and create products that, through carbon sinking. And with that, for example, if we could secure good prices for a ton of CO2 that is sequestrated, we could generate about $82 billion of green financing and revenues for the continent. So in that cluster, there's huge opportunities for young people to play an important role as providers of services within the context of these ecosystems that are required for you to generate credible carbon credits, the registry, so digitalization. It's about utilizing analytics that can determine whether the portion of forest that you said you're going to conserve in lieu of your carbon credits exists, and so on and so forth. We are equally working to accelerate the implementation of the Great Blue Wall Initiative. This is particularly important for the island states on the continent. And this is about combining nature conservation with the sustainable livelihoods, where, for example, if you protect your mangroves, which are key for you to have greater fish stocks, then you will be credited by nature conservation with credits. You could utilize that as debt swaps, climate action for debt restructuring, and so on and so forth. And young people can play a role in that. It's about the blue economy. One of the major problems in the blue economy is, for example, for the fishermen, artisanal fishermen, to be able to have access and data, access to information and data about weather patterns and so on. We've seen a lot of young people coming up with apps that can enable fishermen, ordinary fishermen, to have that information. There's less lives which are lost. It's more opportunity that is created, is livelihoods and things. So our programs are indeed meant to demonstrate to young people that they have a role to play. The entire conversation about the operationalization of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, this market of $1.4 billion, 1.4 billion people today, and 2.5 billion by 2050, the combined size of India and China. And look at what those two countries have created in them because of their critical mass. This is, will be predicated in greater deployment, for example, of e-commerce. This is a space where young people can play an important role in connecting producers with the market opportunities, deploying solutions. AI, that was the conversation that we had before. And AI will be critical in the context of climate action to help farmers, for example, to introduce species that are more tolerant to the weather patterns that are changing. So smart climate agriculture is about deployment of drip irrigation techniques and other techniques which are less water intensive. This is a huge space where young people with their creative potential and energy can provide solutions, context-specific solutions.
Now that is very exciting. So let me ask you very quickly.
Yes.
So you've laid out a lot of exciting things that can take place and that are currently happening or beginning.
Absolutely.
What do you want to see having happened by this time next year at the next Gabi conference?
Well, so we've changed the narrative. Africa is the superpower for climate action and solutions and financing. So let's harness that opportunity. We will provide the information that is you require to be able to come to Africa and be an agent of change. It's only with that scale, the ambition, the speed, that will be able to rescue the SDGs, that will be able to transform the lives on the ground. Reaching the last mile requires everybody's hands on the deck.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.